Back in the 90s, crazy changes were being made across the gaming industry, and these changes were so crazy good that they stuck around and became the norm forever. In terms of graphical presentation, yeah, but controllers ended up going nuts too.
By slightly pressing up on the control stick, Mario will begin to tiptoe. By pressing up further, he'll begin to creep. Still further, he'll walk, then jog, then sprint.
The guy's talking about the analog stick, which the N64 was the first console to use. Every other major player launched with 4 directional pads like the last time, even though they could handle 3D graphics. The N64 launched with this little thing that let you move far more precisely, which was insane for the time. It's hard to understate just how much more nuanced the movement Mario and Link and Star Fox were able to achieve, thanks to this being able to pinpoint 360 distinct degrees of movement. Playing games like Crash Bandicoot or Final Fantasy VII nowadays, nobody's gonna think twice about playing it with analog movement because it just makes them so much better. Imagine walking around these changing camera angles with 8 unchanging directions. So many games that launched on PS1 were either obnoxious to control, had what was basically just 2D gameplay, or had to be totally gimped to work around the D-pad. So Sony went back to the drawing board. And since they were over there, they were probably also trying to come up with a way to one-up their main competitor. What they came up with ended up being just as influential as Nintendo, the DualShock controller. That is such a 90s name. Every PlayStation affiliated dev was hyped about this thing.
But with the analog controller, if you want to hit 22.5 degrees to shoot the guy in the corner room that's trying to take you out, all you have to do is put the controller at 22.5 degrees and you got him. And I really don't think anything can offer more control than that.
New game called Croc, which features this lovable crocodile. Once we switch in the analog system, you're just moving really fluidly.
In Crash Bandicoot 2.
Hey, wait a minute, I know this guy. He's the guy who de-emphasized jumping when they made the platforming game Knack. What do you gotta say, Mr. Sony?
What they'll find is that the PlayStation is just as capable of doing free-roaming, dynamic 3D games as any other hardware system.
Oh, come on, Mark. Don't be a pussy. You can say it.
But what I'm really excited about is that we can do this on Sony. We don't have to go do it on Nintendo, but I probably shouldn't say that.
The DualShock controller is sick as hell. You have not only the 2 sticks that are way bigger and less stiff than the N64's, but they also created a system that let rumble be implemented directly from inside the controller instead of having to reverse a circumcision. This controller was so good that it's not only been directly iterated upon from one PlayStation to the next for like 30 years now, but it was also so good that every other console adopted a 2-stick model as well for the rest of time. I mean, think about that. This was such a major change that became the complete video game industry standard for everybody to follow. And when some of you guys sat down and played Call of Duty Modern Warfare 6422 last year, you just turned the game on and you didn't even think about it once. You intuitively used 2 sticks just like my ex-wife Disney fucked John Boyega over in Star Wars. But this thing came out in 1999 when the PS1 was about to head over the horizon, so it mostly just buffed up older games with analog movement. Except for a few titles, but mostly one specific game. Ape Escape, baby! Let's go, baby! This is my favorite ripoff of a Bruce Willis movie. Ape Escape is real special. It required the DualShock controller. Yeah, it didn't just get a boost, you had to have this to even take on the game's unique gameplay. There's a ton of other standout things about this game. It's got a real big sense of individuality. A lot of like 90s kid YouTubers talk about this game every once in a while, but not very often, which is strange to me because Ape Escape was really popular at the time it came out.
To my days in New York, Broadway, the God, that New York street.
Blaze down a mountain on your fat snowboard. And don't stop there. Head back to Pizza Hut and buy another stuffed crust.
It was featured on a Pizza Hut disc alongside Tony Hawk and Final Fantasy VIII. Spike, the main character, was in the Smash ripoff. Metal Gear Solid 3 had the monkey catching minigame with the Ape Escape monkeys. These days, Sony just pretends it doesn't exist even though they made it. Their Japan studio developed the game. This is Sony's child. I think the last time Sony mentioned it at all was when they were talking about basically making a weird profile NFT of the Peepo monkey. And if that's gonna be their attitude about it, it really needs to live on in the hearts of fans. The game is one of those pre-title intros that gives you the gist of the premise with just music behind it. It's really frantic. It cuts between shots often, there's lots of sound effects, and you get a glimpse of all the main characters without too much about them given away. The real star of the show is unsurprisingly all the different monkeys, and it caps off with one of them being caught with this sick title drop. It feels like a proper cartoon intro, and sometimes I even feel bad for skipping it. Now what is the deal with all these apes and why have they escaped? Well, Dave, I'll tell ya. The proper opening features these two kids pulling up to the professor's house only to have an ape activate his new time machine to go back in time. So you have to bring them back to the modern day. The cutscene's got some nice flair in the shot composition and the character acting. I love how even with the fast pacing, you can tell that this monkey doesn't know what pushing the button did. It's very monkey-like. And that this villain monkey gets highlighted before we get to know them. The professor sets up a just chatting stream to explain to Spike, this kid, what the deal is. And at first I thought this was a waste of time because, you know, I already know what's up. But then I thought about how I would feel if I got jerked back to the dawn of creation and the only way I had to get home was to put a me-sized chimp in a butterfly net. And I realized I probably need a heads up too. So thanks. Thank you. The first level drops us right in with this small open area. We just need to chase down and catch a few monkeys, and this space gives us the chance to get to grips with the game's controls. I mentioned a little earlier that this game was the first to require the DualShock, and that's because the devs are so hyped about it.
We were excited to see, right there on the table, prototypes with 2 analog sticks. There weren't any games that existed at the time that used both sticks, and we were so intrigued by the new opportunities. The ideas just kept coming.
Basically, the player has a bunch of different abilities, and this game calls them gadgets, and you use the right stick in various ways to have them do their thing while still moving with the left stick. For example, we have the stun stick in the net for this first level, so by tilting the right stick, you'll swing either of them in whatever direction you push, and you can switch between any gadgets using the regular buttons, equipping them Zelda style. You're probably wondering how you jump in that case. I mean, this is a platformer after all, you kinda have to jump, and they mapped that to the right bumper under your index finger. I know this is a lot to take in, but that's just the way they made the game. The devs are like a guy that smokes weed and then afterwards wants to try something new. Having a one-of-a-kind control style is a really good way to have a game stand out. It can backfire pretty easily if it just sucks, but even though jumping back in after I haven't played this in years was very overwhelming, using the right stick to do stuff is pretty fun and novel. Coming to grips with hitting a monkey, switching quickly over to the net, and swinging again to catch them has a really visceral and intrinsic sense of fun to it. The stage is wide and open with no bottomless pits, and the monkeys in this stage just run away from you. They don't shoot at you or try to punch you yet, so you're really able to take your time figuring this stuff out. It's a nice little first level that is bare bones compared to every other stage, but I think it's more than warranted giving everything I just explained. I think the team made the right call doing it this way.
Yes!
The next couple of stages stack on top of those basics more than you'd expect them to, but it's better for the game in the long run. The second stage, Primordial Ooze, is covered in water, so there's some monkeys and collectibles you'll have to master swimming to nab. And I actually actively don't like what they came up with for underwater control. You just splooshed in the water, right? From there, you can let go of the stick to resurface, point the stick forward to stay at that height underwater and move around, or you can click the stick in like a button to dive deeper. While you're doing all of that, you can hold the jump button to dash around, and you can click the right stick to shoot nets out for any sea monkeys. It sounds simple enough to get on paper, but in practice I just never really felt confident with it. Fortunately, the game never gets too ambitious with its water levels, so it was a minor annoyance to me. They also teach you that if you click the stick in on land, you'll start crawling around so you can sneak up on monkeys. It's very important for this monkey catching game. So between that and swimming, all your moves are in the bag at this point. Stage 3, Molten Lava, focuses more on showing you how diverse the monkeys will get. There's this guy that just runs away but is doing a handstand when you approach them. There's a pterodactyl next to where the ape hides under a bunch of eggshells. And inside the volcano there's even a little guy riding on a giant T-Rex. So the apes will be taking some effort to get unescaped from now on. I think the message is clear. The theming in these first 3 stages is great too. Each level in this game takes place at a slightly different point in time on top of the monkeys messing around with things. So they all feel distinct from each other somehow in terms of aesthetics. Just in these stages we have a nice grass plain, but even that one has palm trees, a rainy lake with a Nessie floating around, and a volcano with huge dinosaurs that'll charge at you. Such creative level diversity, and all this comes together to make a great intro for a great game. After the intro, the monkey from earlier FaceTimes us to let us know that he's evil. This is Specter. He usually performs at an amusement park, but then he got the helmet he's wearing, so now he understands the class divide. He's using time travel to try and make monkeys the rulers of the world. Here's the one piece of Ape Escape lore we need to dive into. The siren hats all the monkeys wear, these things right here, they're called Peak Point helmets. Specter mass-produced them based on the one that he stole. I think it's supposed to be that he ripped the prototype up to do that, but we're all thinking it looks like he put underpants on his head, right? Oh god, I'm lightheaded. To be like a cute little thing, they abbreviate peak point into peepo, and they call the apes peepo monkeys. So if I say peepo monkey later in the video, now you know why, and I don't sound like a freaking idiot. Anyways, these cutscenes they do are kind of cool. Sure, the framing gets a little boring with some plain old single or shot reverse shots, but the characters move around according to what they're saying. They don't just have canned talking animations, and they're decently expressive with 2D textures for the faces. It's always neat in these 3D platformers to see them do creative stuff with the camera movement too. I love that kind of stuff. And the voice acting keeps things fun. It's not good, per se, ever.
That's right. Apes will soon rule the world, just as it should have been from the beginning.
Specter, what's going on here?
I'm gonna have a great time destroying you and showing you who's the real hero.
But it's silly. It's like a cheesy 4Kids anime, which makes me kind of nostalgic. I will say that right now, specifically, I'm talking about the American version of the game. The English voice acting over in the UK version is actually quite a bit better. However, the awful line delivery still manages to be iconic a lot of the time. Like when you clear a level and Natalie's all like, "You did great." Or when you get a new gadget and she says, "Look what I've got, a new gadget. Check it out." And then the professor always goes, "I'm sending the new gadget over to you right now. Try it out in the training room. Without training, it will be too dangerous for you to continue on to the next area. Well, good luck and be careful." Sometimes you can't even appreciate the performance's cheese though, because the audio mixing can get pretty bad.
Have begun.
And there's not even an option to turn on subtitles. I will never understand why some games just refuse to have them. It makes the experience unbearable for me. Oh, and there's one other twist to the storyline.
I've always wanted to go up against you.
No, you did not. So our buddy from the intro is brainwashed, and sometimes he shows up to race us in these stadium stages. This is his arc, trying to physically best Spike at stuff. I can't say it's very effective, but I get it.
Let's go!
The stadium races are awesome. Jake always shows up out of nowhere and forces you into them the first try, which makes him seem a little threatening because it can throw you off. There's 2 of these races throughout the game, and they take place on these trippy gauntlets full of wildly varying hazards. It feels very Y2K-ish, and with the intense music, the atmosphere here is amazing. These stages are really the only main time you get tested on moving efficiently or jumping precisely, since the rest of the time Ape Escape's all about looking around or climbing. So these stages are pretty tough, especially since with Jake keeping pace with you the whole time, you're basically on a strict timer too. Pulse pounding stuff. Jake cries like a little baby when you win, and you get a ton of collectibles for beating him too. Super awesome concept for a challenge stage. But since we're on the topic of platforming, Spike is one of my least favorite platforming characters. I mean, the game doesn't actually ask a lot from you. You do jump, of course, but there's very few do or die situations. So the game isn't focused on any competence testing. Even in that regard though, Spike isn't as interesting as characters from other collectathon platformers from around the same time. Spyro, Mario, DK, Banjo, Jak and Daxter came out a couple years later. Spike moves like a toddler, and his jump doesn't feel like it's really made for crossing gaps as much as it feels made for climbing up things. In fact, his double jump does the thing where if you don't do it right away, you can't use it at all, which I hate. I hate when games do that. At least he can do a ledge grab, which is helpful, but that was standard by that point. I think the main issue I have with Spike is that he just does everything slowly. His run speed is a mild saunter. Crawling slows everything down to a fuck. God damn it. When he gets hit, it takes him forever to stand up again. When you do an animation, he gets locked into it for a second, that sort of thing. And don't even get me started on how he'll get stuck on collision boxes for no reason, and he'll bounce away from the wall sometimes. It's so annoying. He doesn't have any interesting movement options on him. He just runs and jumps, really. Banjo-Kazooie is a very mildly paced game, but Banjo's got moves out the kazoo to help keep platforming varied and focused on. I don't even really like Spike's character design. His color palette's really boring, and he looks like a far less appealing version of a Chippy Nomura character with the hair. So I probably just made it sound like playing this game completely sucks and is horrible, but you couldn't be more wrong. Spike himself is cringe, but you know what isn't? The various gadgets that he collects. They're really cool.
I'm going for it!
And don't say that. We're now on our way to the mysterious time of the jungle ruins for the next 3 stages, and the first one is bad. Thick jungle is one of the larger stages, especially for being so early on, and it accomplishes this by splitting itself into several sections that are all pretty huge. This gives it the opportunity to have some really annoying gimmicks, which of course it lunges for. The second half has this really annoying section where you have to ride a raft that you control by spinning each stick to match the corresponding oar. Kind of like Downriver if you ever read that in middle school. It doesn't really feel like it matches up very well, and when you spin the sticks real fast, it's easy to accidentally get out of sync, causing you to turn the raft on accident for a few whole seconds before your brain realizes what your hands are doing. That's on top of turning on purpose feeling a bit clunky as it is. You have to use the raft to avoid taking damage from this giant eel thing though, and really this section doesn't take up too much time if you aren't searching for a few secrets. I think the real issue this stage faces is that in APES you get kicked out when you catch X amount of monkeys the first time you play a level. That means to get all the monkeys in the game, I have to revisit every area a second time to clean up the scraps, and normally I don't mind this at all. There's monkeys in most stages that I clearly can't get until I have more gadgets, and the game having a system in place to end a level before it gets too tedious because I zone in on getting all the apes in one shot is honestly appreciated. It prompts me to stick with the game, and it keeps the energy high by helping the player bounce from one area to the next. With Thick Jungle being as big as it is though, that means I basically have to play a whole second level because I got booted before I even got to explore a second half of the stage, and even most of the first half really. So it just makes the level feel really weird when you play it the first time. Plus the music track in the first half is genuinely awful. It sounds like that Yoda bad lip reading song. It sounds like if Drake sampled a royalty-free beat and wrote sad poetry about how his mom got diagnosed with J. Abrams disease. The other 2 stages are really fun though. The monkeys are starting to get a lot zanier, running away from you more quickly and being in more tucked away spots. Dark Ruins is also the first stage to really be built around bottomless pits that make your jumps matter. I really like the atmosphere in this stage. It's daytime, but the music is still kind of spooky and laid back. It makes the ruins feel very liminal. There are also sections inside some of the ruins which feel like nice little pockets, and getting even just one monkey out of finding these makes them worth poking around for, especially when for one of these guys you need to use a block to smash open an underground entrance. I'm always a sucker for that kind of destruction in my games. This level also has an Easter egg where 4 of the chimps are named after the South Park kids: Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Kratman. And that's awesome because South Park is awesome. Really the only issue I have with this stage is these homing missile geodudes. Their movement makes them really difficult to avoid, which is especially annoying with this guy that uses a fan to blow you away if you're not quiet, but that's my only complaint. The last stage, Cryptic Relics, is mega spooky. These ruins are draped in the moonlight of the moon. And there's tons of switches that activate doorways, make these cartoony bridges fall or these transparent ones appear, and there's all these floating platforms. Despite their silliness, it seems like the apes have really been messing with this place. The music is appropriately real weird too, with this strange vocal sample and it uses a weird chromatic downward scale. Ooh, you like that? Yeah. I've been watching 8-Bit Music Theory. With the structure here focusing around going deeper and deeper into the ruins, I don't mind getting kicked out so early. First of all, there's half the monkeys as Thick Jungle, and second of all, the stage is just fun, whereas Thick Jungle made me leave right when I felt like I was past the crappy part. I really like the focus on hitting switches with the new slingshot. There was some tricky shooting to do with the fun little controls. Using the right stick is still novel. Spike himself isn't particularly interesting, but you know what is? The various gadgets he collects. They're really cool. The first 2 you get are the most basic, the Time Net and the Stun Club. I mentioned these, but here's some nuances to them. With the net, you can hold it to the ground and rotate, so if you miss a swing, you can readjust and still capture the monkey. The Stun Club locks Spike into a spinning animation, which can be used when enemies are closing in on you, or you can use it to spin wheels. It's fun to use, but I don't like how Spike will get locked in for a moment after you stop moving. It can be disorienting and throw your platforming timing off. These are the most basic gadgets and a core part of the monkey chasing gameplay, so these usually end up taking 2 of the 4 equipable gadget slots for me the whole game. I already discussed the swimming controls in the water net. Next, the next main gadget you get is a slingshot. By pulling the right stick towards you, you feel like you're pulling the sling. You can tilt back and forth to aim straight ahead, or you can enter the first person mode. For that, you aim with the left stick like in 3D Zelda, but you still pull the right stick back. But you know what? The big cartoony reticle makes this game's aiming 10 times better better than the pre-Wii Zeldas. Yeah, I said it. I actually look forward to aiming my shots with this thing instead of wasting 15 of my arrows because the depth perception is dog shit. The hula hoop that makes you run fast makes you spin the stick until it charges up and gives you a burst of speed. This is probably the most gimmicky of all the power-ups, and I never found myself using it unless I needed to run through a closing door. I like the invincibility it can give you, and I do like the challenge in Coral Cave where you're actually rushing for a long period of time, but they hardly do anything with this thing. I only use it when I have to, and that's a shame because you would think something like a third stadium level focused on this would be a no-brainer. The Skyflyer usually takes up my third slot. It's awesome, but don't take it from me. Take it from this guy who produced the game.
Yeah, I like the Skyflyer the best. Yeah, I can fly around.
So true, bestie. The Skyflyer is another rotate-a-thon, but it makes you fly up in the air and then slowly descend. Great for exploration and platforming. You can swing it on the ground to shoot straight up, or you can use it as a sort of triple jump too. It's probs the most nuanced of all these gadgets, and it's a lot of fun to use and super helpful. The RC car is a really neat idea. Basically, you use the right stick to move it independently, so you're controlling two characters at once. If it falls or explodes, you can click the right stick to summon it right back. The RC car tends to lead on the gimmicky side of things because they use it the same way over and over, but at least it's allowed to have its standout moments and be used more than the Super Hoop. In the post game, you get an item called the Magic Punch. Apparently, the professor got so fed up with the monkey's hijinks that he harnessed the power of the dark arts to finish the job. This replaces the Stun Club, being able to still bop monkeys, but it also allows you to smash most obstacles that were in your way to access new areas. I love how the game was kind of built around locking this up till later. It makes the revisits more fun since those monkey canisters are rare, not overused, and the new areas are pretty awesome. The last gadget is the monkey radar. By pointing the right stick around, you can scan for any monkeys you might be missing and even send the camera over to them for any helpful visual cues. It's really helpful in clearing stages no matter when you enter them, and aids in giving this game more spunk by focusing on the monkeys. A very natural but well-handled inclusion. But since the game is all about the monkey catching, I would always leave the Stun Club / Magic Punch equipped. The net never left my arsenal ever, and the monkey radar and Skyflyer were there as often as possible. There was the occasional moment where they would be swapped out, but as I said, those other ones are mostly just gimmicky. I do actually like all the gadgets conceptually, I don't hate any. The slingshot is always a treat, and the RC car has swag puzzles. The Super Hoop definitely is fun to use too, but it really needed its big moment to truly feel as awesome as the other gadgets, but it never really got it. However, as moves all made to give the right stick something to do, they all feel intuitive to use. I really have to praise the team for making moves that would all correspond to a specific stick movement, because it all makes the gadgets easy to get to grips with and fully master after a minute or two.
Coming up with the control with the two sticks was the biggest challenge. We did a lot of testing, and we are surprised how we kept the original concept of the game we had at the outset, and I think it paid off.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Good job, Sony guy. The next few levels are in Water World, so we get some nice tropical levels. Krabby Beach is pretty cute. It introduces the Super Hoop, but obviously it's nothing too crazy.
Krabby Beach is such a charming little level.
Are you looking at the frame chugging right now? Sometimes this game gets a bit too big for its britches and just falls apart. That's the exception though. For the most part, it runs at a pretty smooth 30 FPS. Even though some people may complain about that, I still think it looks cool. In fact, I think it makes the animations even snappier. It introduces this mechanic where later sections get locked behind this thing until you catch the number of monkeys it needs. I would hesitate to say that this adds anything substantial to any level it's in. Usually it just gates off portions so you explore in a certain direction. Here it just locks you out for no real reason, but I also wouldn't say it makes any stage worse either, so it's hard to have any strong feelings about it. Something that's weird about this stage is the music. There's nothing wrong with it, but this level in the middle of the game has the same music from the opening. Why do games do this? Like, I was playing Mario Odyssey the other day in the Steam Gardens, and the music was all funky and stuff. And then I got to the end of the game, and the same music started playing. This is so confusing. Was that like Mario's favorite level or something? I'm all for a good leitmotif, but come on, that's just so weird. Anyway, Coral Cave has one of the chillest tracks in the game, like the harp and the right speaker. It fits the cave segment real well. The outside area has this big pocket that gives the super hoop its one hurrah. That lands you 2 whole monkeys basically for free since they're just chilling. I don't know if it's worth 2 monkeys though. I like the guy on the shark. Very, very cute. Dexter's Lab. Man, I'm so eepy sleepy. Yoshi's Island. Fuck. Dexter's Island has some to do on the island, like cheesing the wind physics eventually to get stuff early. It has. But mostly it just focuses on the inside of this turtle who ate all these monkeys because he's a dangerous sociopath with a long history of violence, just like my ex-wife. The inside looks cool. You have this snot water, weird transparent platforms, this wrecked boat, bones, these tentacle things. I probably only think it's cool because it reminds me of Jabu Jabu's belly, but having it referenced in a PlayStation game, especially one as un-Zelda as Ape Escape, makes it cool. It comes out of nowhere. You have to wonder why the apes would hide out in this guy's colon though. Did they think they were safe hiding in here forever? Did they think I wouldn't come and hunt them down here? Did they really think I wasn't in divorce? The titular apes or simians or chimps or any other synonyms I call them by are the 204 main collectibles of Ape Escape, which is a video game for the PlayStation 1. These are some of the most unique collectibles in any platformer I've ever played. It would be disingenuous for me to say that every other knickknack is some unalive thingy, though that's the majority. Even in games like Super Mario 64 with the rabbit chases or Banjo-Kazooie with the Jinjos though, they just aren't the same. For starters, getting the rabbit spawns in a main collectible, and in Banjo, the Jinjos stand around until you touch them. The apes are kind of a combo of the two because you have to chase them down and they count as the main collectible by themselves. The difference is that there's a ton more monkeys making them the center of attention, unlike the rabbit just being a set piece and the Jinjos being like 1/64th of the things to grab. And that larger number also forces each ape to be different from each other, so they all stay fun to track using the gadgets. The way the apes are going crazy in this world is really memorable. They each have a small piece of each level just dedicated to them, so they all stand out. There's definitely some just chilling for an easy snag, but since the game warps you out, the more challenging ones will remain for later most of the time. Since every monkey has some gimmick to even their behavior, they all manage to be a memorable character in the game. Some will run away at high speeds, some will hide or jump around the environment, some have costumes, some are sleeping. During the chase, some will toss banana peels or turn around and punch you without warning. Some pull out literal machine guns or missiles, and the toughest are the UFO or mech pilot guys. Each level gives the monkeys something area specific to do. It feels like the level design was influenced by giving the apes a space in the world, which makes Ape Escape surprisingly immersive. It really adds to the hunting aspect. You know, you don't just touch them to catch them, you have to swing your net and send those fellas back to hell. Back to hell! And for this game, I think that maxes out the fun. I enjoy sneaking up on them whenever I need to. Monkeys will be less aware when you do this, so if you've got a runner or gunner, it works best to get on the floor and close the distance. And all of that is awesome and adds positively to the game itself, but I need to come clean and admit something. I love monkeys in real life. Like, my TikTok and Instagram pages are all monkey stuff, because I'm the world's second biggest monkey fan. So this game being based around such silly creatures is a dream come true for someone like me. Ape Escape's escaped apes are some of my favorite collectibles to go for in any video game because of how they are monkeys, and also how full of character they're able to be on such limited hardware. And you know what? I also have to give the thumbs up to the monkeys as mascot characters, especially here in the first game. And let's face it, the Peepo monkeys are definitely fucking mascots looking back on this series. Spike isn't super memorable, so of course with there being so many apes with a good design base and fun quirks, they're gonna be the face of this whole shabobble. But their design unfortunately peaked in the first game on the most limited hardware. Since the PS2 came out like 2 seconds after this game was released, the second they could add more polygons, the monkeys got smoothed out, and that's how they've been portrayed since. And I have to draw the line here. This design is some Minions rabid shit, and it just feels like they're cute characters first, main antagonists second. With the low poly graphics over here, you look at them and say, oh, that is a wild animal, that is a vile creature, and they have got to be stopped. It goes to show that by having something look even a teensy bit less generally appealing, you can actually make your mascot be more effective. Not to say a mascot can't be unappealing from being too evil as well, but the apes in this game really found that balance. It's a shame they changed it.
Let's go!
Yeah, okay, Adam Levine. The fourth world is called New Freezeland, unlike the more naturalish names for the last three. Snowy Mammoth has a giant machine be a major set piece in the level, which shows the monkeys are really tampering with their environments at this point. There's also a Snowy Mammoth with a sniper monkey on top, and this grouping of igloos with a really fast monkey hiding inside. This level has a lot of variety with all these vignettes, all killer, no filler. Because of all the variety in the level design, they didn't really feel like placing a ton of monkeys around apparently. If I'm getting 5 out of 6 monkeys, just let me finish the job. I guarantee you monkey number 5 probably had the last guy right there anyways. I'm also not a fan of dealing with the mammoth fading into the fog. Not literally, I'm talking about PS1 fog. For those that don't know, when your game is in 3D, everything's made out of a bunch of triangles, and while consoles can now draw tons of triangles, or tries, to the point that for decades now, curvature's been able to be simulated. Back on PS1, they couldn't do that. There was a very strict limit on how many tries they could draw before the frame rate really started tanking and your PS1 started screaming at you. So most devs would make stuff in the distance fade out to avoid this, and people call it fog. I think that's one of the few times a gaming colloquial term has made sense. They really nailed it with that one. Some 3D games would use camera angles or triangle reduction to get around this. Games like Silent Hill would famously work the fog into the game's world. In Ape Escape, it's not fog, it's just PS1 fog. So when I'm trying to shoot this monkey and they're firing back, sometimes it gets stupid hard because they fade out and I can't see. It's never an issue for platforming because I only need to see right in front of me for that, but it's an issue for some apes. That's a sacrifice the team had to make for the sake of a cool idea. The other two snow levels are surprisingly similar, although there's not a lot you can really do to diversify them, can you? They both focus on vertical movement using the Sky Flyer, although the first one, Frosty Retreat, is more linear, taking a detour through a treacherous cave and ending on this large open water area, and the later stage, the Hot Springs, has more of a sandbox approach. There is an endpoint after you climb up the outside of a spiral, but there are stops for you to seek, like this icy maze where you use the polar bears to open paths for you. It's neat. The game's definitely getting a bit tougher. I even ate shit and died at one point during the cave in Frosty Retreat.
Oh no!
Jesus, this loading. But something awesome about this game is that you don't have to recollect things. Once you get a monkey or specter coin, the game remembers that forever. Even if you die, and even if you game over, you still got it. Unless you turn off your PlayStation without saving. But that's not Ape Escape's fault. In a collectathon with like 300 things to get, that's immensely helpful and it takes a huge load off my mind. Just based on the level theming, this has to be the weakest world of the game so far. None of the levels are bad, they all just feel homogenous, whereas the other worlds didn't feel as repetitive. Hopefully World 5 kicks it up a notch. Minigames, I love them, you love me. Oh man, I definitely wrote this when I was hungover or something. Remember earlier when I said the team was pumped about using the right stick for the gadgets? Well, they had so many ideas that they made full-fledged side games for you to play with a buddy after you collect enough Specter coins in the levels. And they were really excited about these things too.
Another cool feature is the added bonus levels, like the skiing game, the ape boxing, or the Monkey Galaxy. We think you'll love them.
Oh, okay. So they're supposed to be the best part of this game, basically, is what you're saying. They're not super in-depth, so we're gonna take a pit stop here and discuss them real quick. First is the skiing minigame. A simple race where you use one stick to point each rocket ski, ideally pointing them the same way to try to max out your speed. This is fun with friends and a fine distraction solo, either way only for a few minutes. I really enjoyed the presentation though. The visuals feel WarioWare-esque, where they shift the art style just because they can and it works out great. The boxing minigame is stupid fun. Using the sticks to wave these physics-driven arms has a lot of charm, just like the whole presentation of the minigame. This pre-rendered loading image is hilarious, along with all the different ape avatars. The problem is that whether you're doing 1 or 2 players, this game just takes too long to get done with a round. And besides the silly concept, it doesn't feel like there's anything to reach for. Skiing lets you race your friends or a previous time, and the next minigame has a score counter. This is just boxing that, again, takes too long. Probably the weakest of the 3. But it's better than Wii Sports because at least this doesn't give me freaking tennis tennis elbow when I'm pretending I'm getting exercise. Galaxy Monkey.
Or the Monkey Galaxy.
Nuh-uh, Funko, you're completely wrong. Galaxy Monkey is an arcade twin-stick shooter where you get 3 lives and the only goal is to stay alive through waves of foes and get a high score. Even though it's basic, I enjoy this the most since it's the most straightforward and enjoyable. I'm not a big fan of many existing arcade games besides like Pac-Man, really, and a few others, but I do like games that are clearly inspired by an arcade mindset, so this is great for me. If I was a kid playing APES and I had a bunch of free time on my hands, I could totally see myself really getting into Galaxy Monkey specifically. Maybe then I wouldn't have gotten addicted to jerking off like I'm in a Judd Apatow movie. It's definitely the least tech demo-y of the 3 minigames on offer too. You unlock each of these in the order I just discussed them at 10, then 20 and 40 total Specter coins, respectively. Those are collectibles that are just sitting around to find, and I think with a game like Ape Escape where the entire point is its unorthodox collectible characters, it works out for the best. The coins being a supplementary collectible makes them a worthwhile inclusion since they aid the level exploration. With monkeys, you've got to stop exploring and go out of your way to get them, so the coins are something to still give your brain a little jolt without you having to stop poking around. You see it, you go grab it, you move on with your day. It really helps the flow of the gameplay. There are 60 coins, but once you get 40, they aren't engaging to collect, honestly, but that isn't an issue for the bulk of the collectathon. Now let's get off of this subject and get back to some more levels, which is a line that I wrote before I realized what the structure of this video is actually going to be as I was fucking editing it. So bumper time. We're at the dawn of civilization where Specter's hiding out, so we're finally hunting him down. All the areas revolve around human structures and it's awesome. The first one is Sushi Temple. It's this Japanese ninja house. Aesthetically, it looks boring at first because it's a big house surrounded by dirt, but there's a lot to do around outside the house. There's a lava gauntlet inside this well over here, as well as the inside of the ninja house itself, which is dark and full of a bunch of verticality. You can hit this bell when an ape hides inside of it, and you snipe this guy off the roof and break his spine. There's a shocking amount of stuff to do in this level, and I can't wait to revisit it. Wabi Sabi Wall. I can't believe I had to say that out loud. Will be a pain later, mainly because it's the Great Wall of China and it's very linear. It stops for you to get a bunch of monkeys on the main path and has a big focus on actual platforming. This has by far the largest bottomless pits in the game, making the still basic platforming challenges tense and still fun. This level also introduces monkeys that have black pants and shoot at you with real guns, which I still can't get over. They should probably be banned from their local NRA chapter. And with this stage having a definitive end point, it forces you to confront a UFO pilot. Those stay intimidating even in the re-exploration phase since they're the most chaotic, but you have to learn how to deal with them at some point, so it's good they make you do it here. With how linear and daunting the wall is, it sounds like it would be shitty for this game, but it's actually real fun. And even though the linearity makes sure it'll be tedious later, I only have to get 2 monkeys when I come back, so is it really gonna be that bad? No. We finally escape the aesthetic clutches of Asia and head for the crumbling castle, where Specter is confirmed to be. With it being made clear to capture Specter, our goal isn't to find monkeys, we just have to make it to the end. But since you don't get kicked out, you can't collect as many of the 20 fucking monkeys, Jesus, as you want before you reach Specter. So I did. The castle's got a great labyrinthian feel to it. You explore the outside plenty, you climb around the rafters, you explore the dungeon, which has a watery section. It feels like a giant castle, but it also feels like Specter's castle, since there's all this future tech and makeshift steampunk machinery throughout the whole place. At the end, we finally catch up with Jake and Specter, only for them to warp away again and force us into a boss fight. Not before Spike tries to get through to his friend, though.
Everything is under control and coming along very nicely, according to plan.
Okay, let's do some proofreading. You could have picked one of those 3 phrases.
Everything is under control.
Yo mama's under control.
Coming along very nicely.
Yo mama's coming along nicely after I... Bruh.
according to plan.
Okay, chill out, Palpatine. See, dude, you didn't edit your sentence down, and so I had to go with 3 mid bits instead of my 1 best one. That's completely unacceptable for you to treat me this way. They poople... What the fuck? They poof away and we have to fight Thor from Infinity War. This fight would be really boring in any other game, but it's bad here because the camera's not fixed. It keeps jerking behind Spike when the goal is to avoid the boss's attacks, so I can't see anything. I don't think Ape Escape with its leisurely movement scheme benefits from having boss fights. I don't even really think this stage needed one. It could have just ended after we caught up with Specter, really. But I guess they wanted something big to cap off the gameplay. It just isn't fun because I can't see. After all that, we get warped to the present where the apes are taking over. This cutscene is awesome. Monkeys wreaking havoc all over the place is fun, and I like the video message from the professor, how Natalie is trying to hold the door back in real time, with the viewer getting little visual updates every time one of the professor's images disappears. The chaotic pacing of this scene is just amazing to behold. It lets you know the next set of levels will have stakes as you search for Specter more. With the quick visual gags, zany action, and speedy audio pacing, this scene feels like anything out of the Lego Movie, which is the biggest compliment I can give it. That's like my favorite movie. These more action-centric cutscenes are the best parts of the game's story, because the dialogue-driven cutscenes are either totally functional and average, or a mess. My nitpick is that like 50 monkeys should have washed in when the door broke instead of just 2. Other than that, flawless. Let's check out these present-day levels. Futurama! The next world is called Futurama. You know, and I'm really just riffing here, just putting ideas out. But do you think that's what Jerry Seinfeld said when he brought a teenager to a red carpet event? Because I don't think that's what he said.
Spike!
Man, who is this girl? She shows up before every level, but I know like zippy zap about her. I looked it up. Apparently her name is Cassie or Casey, at least in the English version. And since there are a bunch of other facets to Ape Escape as a franchise, surprisingly, I guess there's enough info to write a wiki article. But there's almost nothing to her in this game. If it wasn't for the fact that the other characters are gone, I'd wonder why she's even included. Futurama's first stage is City Park, but it quickly becomes this underground sewer that has one of my least favorite songs. It's fine. One of the few levels that doesn't stand out. I don't have much to say on it. Beforehand, you get the RC car, and its puzzles are all the same here. Either you press a switch, or you chase a monkey out of a hole. They don't escalate either for now, except for this one switch where the path to it is thin so the car can fall. I liked the trap door here. The room with the constantly rolling barrels isn't very fun to deal with. Whatever. It stinks that the last stretch is off to a fairly mediocre start. Next up is Specter's factory, where he's mass producing assault weapons and large-scale artillery. Now listen, I hate guns and think that they should not exist, but purely in the context of this game not being real in any way, that is freaking badass. Like, these monkeys that are trying to kill me with completely average, non-cartoony weapons are so funny to me. It matches up with my sense of humor perfectly. I hope you enjoyed that very positive rant because I fucking hate this level. The ape that gets in a mech that you can only get by making sure the shitty tank doesn't break down can eat a dick. The tank is like the paddle boat where you control it using the 2 sticks in tandem, but it's got its own issues. It's just too fast. In concept, it's better than the boat by letting you just go, but the slipperiness is equally disorienting. The part of the level inside the factory is fine enough. I like the design weaving between several rooms, the creative platforming puzzles, and they make good use of the RC car with this circular room where you have to use it to hold down switches and extend platforms. That's great escalation like I wanted. And the attention to detail pulls the whole thing together. Throughout the stage, there's conveyor belts producing and moving more people helmets down the assembly line, and by the end, they're being packaged up and sent out. This game's environmental detail is really underrated. It's just that first guy. It's so frustrating to catch, and you're required to get it right away because there's a locked door. Once you have something that fucking annoying at the beginning, I am soured on the rest of your level. Fortunately, TV Tower acts like some nice Listerine to close us out. God, I love the level select icon for this one. The perspective compared to all the other models lets you know that this one matters. And yeah, we're chasing Specter again. I think this level has some really nice progression though. Spike's climbing up the tower, so it gates each floor with a few monkeys. So you still get to have the fun of exploring, but constantly climbing further up maintains the story's sense of urgency. Something fun in this level is that there's an out of bounds glitch you can do to get on the street and stand on the cars out here at the start. part. I'm not doing it, but you can if you want. The music here is one of my favorite tracks in the game. The bass goes hard, and the trebly synth on repeat fits the urban city at night so well. It's really great. At the top of the tower, Natalie's legs are broken, and we have to do another boss fight. This one is more challenging than the night, but it's also more fun than the night. Just such an immense improvement. The use of a scripted camera for every attack, the focus on avoiding obstacles at a tense controlled pace, and the opportunity to get extra hits in a more risky way are all great. TV Tower is the only truly great area in this batch. I said the snow world was the weakest so far, but we're getting close to the end, so I'd say this world is the de facto weakest in the game. I still have the energy to keep going though, and that's a good thing because Specter teleported away again.
I'm not giving up that easily. I just had another brilliant thought, so I have to run now, but I'll see you later. You can be sure of that. See ya!
Hey, wait a minute. Where do you think you're going? Wait!
I blabbed about how much style some of the cutscenes have, but that really extends to everything about Ape Escape. The best games are full of personality, but a lot stop at a certain point. Like, they'll have a dope sense of character design and animation or a clean UI, but for the sake of gameplay, they'll make sure it never gets in the way, and that's got merit. I definitely don't hate it, of course. But you can probably guess that I'm ramping up to praise a different approach. The games that get it really right for me get the characters and UI involved in a way that isn't just clean or nice to look at, but really jumps in your face to grab your attention at appropriate times. Visual shorthand and readable graphic design are important, especially in a platforming game where you need to be able to make progress without dying every 2 seconds, but the games that are willing to push it with maximalism are the ones that stick with me the most. Ape Escape handles this beautifully. The levels are fast-paced by themselves with the funny monkeys and environments, but the game takes time to get crazy with things. Half of what makes monkey catching so fun is when you get them in the net and the camera spins around with the sound effects. It's great to collect the Specter coins too because the game makes a big deal about it. Stuff like that makes the game far more full of style than most other platformers that insist on sticking to just the gameplay as much as they can. The game's willingness to get excited about your accomplishments makes every collectible oozing with potential dopamine, and shows the game's anime influence to be sure. It's not just the little things in the core gameplay loop either. Ape Escape packs its levels full of little set pieces that really make my day. I've mentioned a few: the falling bridge, the mammoth, the gears in the castle, the bell. My very favorite probably has to be this platform made of cartoon bug eyes from a giant monkey bust. All these moments have this over-the-top quality that few platforming games have been able to match for me. It's like every idea was crammed in by the design team. It would be horrible of me to not mention how the low poly graphics are such a big part of what makes this game so iconic. I've said in the past that 90s 3D games look great still, and it helps the style here so much. The bright colors make this a cartoonish game, but the triangular straight surfaces on all the characters help the game keep this cool factor. The monkeys aren't cute in this game. Their blocky look makes them look fucking dead-eyed and insane in the head, and the fact that they use real weapons later on adds to that sense of edge. Ape Escape stays distinct with the combination of cartoony environments alongside very anime sci-fi characters and a modern-sounding soundtrack. I mean, look at the cover art for the soundtrack album. They stuck with the low poly designs, and it makes me feel like I really need to play this game because it doesn't look like any other game soundtrack cover art I've ever seen. Of course, a big part of what makes this game have such a distinct vibe from other platformers also has to do with the sound design. Spike's voice chipping in, the monkey sounds, and all the compressed gadget sound effects fit the mood perfectly. The team absolutely nailed it here. It's like a robot sci-fi take on classic Hanna-Barbera sound effects, and I could not be happier with that approach. Now, I think anyone who's played Ape Escape knows what I'm about to say here, but by far the most far-reaching and well-known aspect of Ape Escape that most people know sticks out about the game and its style is the drum and bass soundtrack. And oh baby, yeah, it's time for the Ape Escape's OST was done by Soichi Terada, a Japanese DJ. We're actually very fortunate here today because the Ape Escape Twitter account interviewed the guy and made a whole thread out of it during the 20th anniversary. They haven't posted in years, it's been defunct since that celebration, go figure. But the tweets are still up, so I decided I'd quote them since we're talking about this guy's music anyway. I'm using a direct translation from Google. Here's what he had to say about the soundtrack from working on the project. From 1995 to 1996, I produced original songs and remixes of drum and bass and jungle with the theme of sumo wrestling and released them on my own label. It was developed under the name of Sumo Jungle, but I think that the production team got a call from the Ape Escape production team who heard this. When I heard about the content of the game, I was very excited because I used to play a lot on PlayStation. I remember having the production team show me a demo play. A controller with an analog stick was something I'd never seen before, and it gave me a sense of unknown fun. At the first meeting, I was told that the main character, Kakaru, is a lively character who is always running. That's why the music of Ape Escape basically has a high-speed beat of 160 BPM or higher. At that time, I also enjoyed making songs with fast beats, so I experimented a lot. I didn't think much about the tempo of the time, and after making it normally, I realized halfway through that if I raised the tempo above 160 beats per minute, it would sound stupid or monkey-like, so I tried that method a lot, and then Google put in the words rice field. In order to get approval for more than 40 songs, we had to make about 50 songs in about half a year, so it was hard work. When Spike crawls, the number of sounds in the music decreases a little, and when he pretends not to be there, the number of sounds decreases further. There was unexpected fun in chasing the monkeys and how important it was to hide without being detected. I made all the songs with monkey spirit, so I can't rank my favorites, but I like all the songs. During the production of this soundtrack, I felt like a monkey and acted according to monkey standards. That's awesome. Right now I have 1 and 3 soundtracks, but I have a delusion that I want to develop this and celebrate it with everyone by doing an Ape Escape retrospective from a musical point of view on the coming 25th anniversary. God, yes, please do that. But yeah, the music in this game is definitely standard drum and bass. It feels like a DJ made it. It gets into grooves and is satisfied with spending time in them. The beats are especially emphasized with that dynamic beat fading Terada mentioned being well used during the sneaking gameplay. And the soundtrack manages to sound cohesive because of all those elements while also being catchy and varied to fit all the different locales. It's amazing. This is a very unique approach to take for a platformer, but not for gaming in general, because what you have to remember is that a lot of games in the 90s like to take influence from the pop culture around them, and drum and bass and electronica was really popular at the time. A lot of YouTubers like to pretend Ape Escape is the only game to do this ever.
It goes for this sort of drum and bass sound that you really don't hear too often in platformers. Bomberman Hero is like the only game that I think comes kinda close.
It's just completely wrong.
Well, I remember thinking back then that the Bomberman Hero soundtrack sounded very Ape Escape-esque, and that's
the same. Get on YouTube and type in video game drum and bass compilation, and you'll find like a million 2-hour videos dedicated to this stuff. Jeez. Soichi Terada's individual style feels very distinct, but that doesn't mean he's the only person to produce music in this genre for any video game ever. You ever played Ridge Racer or Streets of Rage? It's just dance and house. This is in the exact same vein. The style is so distinct because he's off doing his own thing most of the time. He owns his own production company and puts out several times a year, and even does a new soundtrack every now and again. In fact, he just released the soundtrack for Fantavision 2020X a few months ago while I was still writing this video. You should look him up on Spotify because all his stuff is amazing. Focusing more just on Ape Escape, it's 99% bops. There's definitely some tracks that I'm not a fan of, like Frosty Retreat, Coaster, and Thick Jungle. They all have sounds in them that are in your face in a way I don't appreciate, but every other track I love. Every level has 1 or 2 songs made for it that fit while also being a nice surprise. And between levels, the musical atmosphere will go from happy-go-lucky to more ambient to melodic, depending on what the stage needs. The variety in the cutscenes is also well appreciated, because all those songs match the mood each scene needs too. Soichi Terada definitely understood the game he was working on incredibly well. He was so good that they brought him back to do the soundtrack for Ape Escape 3 after he got replaced by somebody else in the meantime. But we're gonna stick with the first game's soundtrack today. As a final note before I play my favorite tracks, I'll be pulling from the actual actual PlayStation 1 soundtrack. There is a version on Spotify called the Originate soundtrack, which features different mixing and higher quality synths. Which version of each song I prefer varies between any given track, but I wouldn't say any version of any of these songs is straight up bad. In fact, I'd highly recommend listening to both versions to detect the differences for yourself. I'm just sticking with the PSX stuff because I feel like I'm less likely to get claimed that way. With all that being said, here's some of my favorite tracks from APES. track that I want to specifically call out is Specter's theme. It's really sinister and adds to the time he's on screen being a villain, but my favorite thing about it is that it does this whole intro at the beginning and then immediately does a downward key change right before the melody kicks in. It gives his character more emphasis. Like how the TV tower had a standout select icon, this final area, Specter Land, gets a huge icon to give it its own sense of gravitas. This is the third stage where they say go catch Specter, but we're actually focused on exploring the different parts of the park so we can rescue Natalie, the professor, and Jake, catch some monkeys, learn valuable life lessons, and have fun doing it. It's presented like one huge level, though with how dense the smaller levels can be, it really feels like this is an entire world, and as we'll see later, it just keeps getting bigger. But I love Specter Land. I'm not really a theme park guy in real life, roller coasters make me real nauseous, but I do like when games have whimsical theme park stuff in them. Even though Specter's got this place all booby-trapped, the jubilant atmosphere freaking rocks. Every sub-area of this place has its own music track too. They really wanted this game to go out with a bang. Western Land is awesome because I love cowboy stuff, so I'm really glad a desert stage appeared in any capacity in this game, since it's been running dry in that regard. The coaster stresses me out. I love auto-running challenges, but the cart has a really huge input delay with the jump, so even though you're just jumping with good timing, this can be one of the most challenging sections in the game until you get a hang on it. Clearing it takes you to the haunted house where Natalie is. It uses the theme well, with lots of ghosts and macabre obstacles, and even has a small moment where you have to pay attention to the fake decor in order to find the real path forward.
What have you been doing all this time? Let's go, we've got to find them.
Jeez, this is who I've been missing at the desk. What a freaking attitude. Next, we go to the circus to rescue the professor from this cage. We have to climb to the top and drop down from the inside, which leads to a tough, prolonged platforming section. I was definitely pissed while working my way out, but I didn't mind the challenge, especially since game overs are so not punishing in this game. This area also has a 3-phase boss once you get to the top of the cage, and boy are they aggressive. This thing had me scraping for my life. I could not get a moment to breathe with this guy.
You've gotten stronger. Thanks to your gadgets, Professor. No, the gadgets don't contain any real power. It's all in how you were able to use them. The true power is inside of you, Spike.
That is freaking cheesy, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but that will be important later, so tuck it away. After this, the final thing we gotta do is face off with Jake at the go-karts in a nauseatingly simple boss. It threw me for a loop at first, because you're supposed to stand on this turf over here to bait him, but my instinct was to find a weak spot directly on the car, and I'm definitely dumb, but I also feel like standing on a button to start a boss fight wouldn't be most people's first instinct either. But we finally made Jake snap out of it, which leads to a pretty sweet reunion between the friends. Or more than friends to some Ape Escape fans, I'm sure.
And I'm not going to say that couldn't be the case, but I'm just not going to acknowledge that. Not because I'm against the idea, I'm really not, but I'm just not going to acknowledge that. Not because I'm against the idea, I'm just against the idea of sexualizing, what are they, like 10 years old? Yeah, 10 years old.
Okay, this guy again. Okay, look, I don't want to see Rule 34 of these kids either. The two little guys holding hands doesn't mean they want to bang. Do you even know what a romantic relationship is?
See, that's just bullshit.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Your fucking 5-paragraph essay comment leaving ass can fuck off, cunt. But now Specter unveils this giant floating castle as his final fortress, where he wants to meet up since he's decided we should join his MLM. And the ambience here is crazy. I love this part where it's completely silent all over the castle until a monkey turns on a generator and then all the engines get going, and to top it all off, the freaking best song in the whole game kicks in. It's like Crumbling Castle, where it's this insanely huge labyrinth, except even bigger and full of vertical platforming and the most elaborate puzzles in the game. And you're in space, so when you're outside the castle, you get that impossible sense of scale as you close in on Specter. This has to be my favorite part of the game. The area is just so cool, shockingly beautiful, I would say. It's incredible how the animations, level design, art design, and music were all directed so perfectly to really bring this final level together. Something I definitely appreciate about the crazy vertical platforming sections is that they wanted to be very forgiving here so that you would be basically guaranteed to reach the credits. They put this infinite extra life in the 3 super long stretches of the level and before the boss. And thank God, honestly, because Spike still likes to just walk off fucking ledges sometimes. After discussing every level in this game and their gimmicks, I think I've expressed what works and doesn't work in any given situation this game throws at you as well as I'm able to already. But before we get to the Specter fight and then the post game, I wanted to kind of put a nice bow on my stage design thoughts in general. We've done every stage. I'm sure my personal ranking will go up or down a little when I clean up here in a sec, but I think the first impression they all left matters more here. The design of Apescape is tough to really dissect because it has a specific but varied approach, which is why I went over them all individually as I linearly went through the game. This may be weird, but I compare the level design to Mario Odyssey. The game has these large open levels with a ton of interconnecting areas. It also doesn't kick you out until you've collected a specified amount of monkeys, but upon a revisit it won't kick you out at all. However, even with all the open spaces, there are some that are purely linear with very few distractions. Both approaches are fine, and I think Apescape handles them really well, honestly. I've already said this plenty, the game rarely is ever dedicated to platforming. It focuses far more on exploration and platforming puzzles using the gadgets, which, considering the circumstances, is fine by me and completely understandable, and the monkeys add most of the reflex-based challenge back. The game does have events that require you to keep moving, and it does have moments where you need to use your jumps to avoid falling, but those are usually non-lethal until the late game. The platforming is mostly about climbing upwards, nothing wrong with that, and the jumping is far from de-emphasized in this game. It's incredibly important, but the right stick-centric controls really made a unique situation for the devs that needed to be tackled with a certain deft hand and man, what am I talking about? The right stick controls and the unique collectibles created a level design challenge that really needed to find a way to be focused and cohesive, but also large and spacious to compensate for the apes running around and the margin of error the right stick could create. And despite any gripes I have, I think they really succeeded with the level design in this game. In this final room, we finally caught up with the ruler of the planet of the apes. Hi Specter, how are you doing?
What's wrong with you? I can't believe what a mess you made. You didn't have to blow everything apart. I told you the door would be open. I only wanted to talk to you.
Oh damn, my bad. Well, I'm here to hang out now. Where do you want me to put my shoes? Whoa! Specter tries brainwashing Spike like he did with Jake. Oh, and by the way, Specter confirmed earlier that this is magic.
Oh look, you've broken the spell.
He gained super intelligence and immediately studied ancient wizard techniques. That's amazing. Spike resists, saying that power alone isn't the true strength. and you know what? This game's story may not have been presented all that well, but they just pulled me all the way in. With the action-packed scenes like this, they display this unabashed corniness that really feels like an awesome cheesy anime. Whoa! My laundry's done. Like, it makes you roll your eyes, but it also makes you smile at the same time. I'm really rooting for myself to win here. The fight with Specter and his mech is not hard, and apparently is prone to making my PS2 flip out temporarily. But it feels cool. It's got the weight you want a fight like this to have. I prefer the first phase where you have to bob and weave as you see yourself from Specter's perspective. That is so creative. It goes down pretty quickly. Specter isn't defeated, however, and warps away after getting surprisingly emotional.
You must be joking! You're not taking me anywhere! I'm never going back to that rotten place!
Geez, this amusement park must have a dark side to it if he's getting that triggered.
You listen, and you listen good! I will return, and when I do, I'll destroy you and the world as you know it! So you better be ready, because next time, I won't fail!
And then Spike meets up with his friends and roll credits. But this is definitely one of those shitty short endings to a game that they give you to get you to keep playing after the staff roll. And sure enough, right after, there's a cutscene where Spike decides to go catch the rest of the monkeys. So getting all the collectibles is more baked into the story than in most games. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I mean I'm still game, and I was gonna do it anyway for the video. Can I tell you guys a secret? I fucking hate 100%ing games. I used to do it when I was little. I did it with all the Mario games on the Wii. But then I was playing Lego Indiana Jones because my uncle got it for me for Christmas. And they had this little side quest where you could find secret Star Wars characters so you can unlock Han Solo as a playable character because of Harrison Ford. But the game glitched out because I found one out of order and my save file got stuck. So I got traumatized out of completing games for the rest of time forever. That being said, Ape Escape is really awesome to get the secret ending in. I would have had to for the video because the final boss is locked behind getting all the monkeys, and the game gets the pacing pretty perfect, so hunting the remaining monkeys doesn't take that long. It added maybe a couple more hours onto a 6-hour game. Very manageable for cleanup. There is the question of whether the reward you get for collecting every ape is actually worth it, but what I want to focus on first is how getting every monkey is very funny. In most levels, you'll need to get 3 to 5 more. Some revisits require as low as just 1 more, and the highest it ever gets is the 8 remaining in Thick Jungle, but you'll be able to get around more efficiently due to this being a revisit. And since the average revisit hovers around that middle range of extra monkeys, they're never very long or intimidating re-explorations. And not even re-explorations. A lot of the time, due to how semi-linear this game can be, you're bound to stumble onto at least one new pocket, and each of these little nooks and crannies are shockingly dense, most of them having at least 2 monkeys instead of just 1. This game uses the design and monkeys to its full advantage to make these levels feel as varied now as they did the first time. This part introduces the magic punch, which aids in finding new areas and getting some specific monkeys locked in the containers. Spectre, that's cruel, man. PETA will have your ass. These containers do seem like negative padding, but it's used for like less than 10 monkeys, so it doesn't even have the chance to bother me. I do prefer when the magic punch gets used to open new parts of the map. It really gets the job done. Even though I was doing it for the content, nabbing every single monkey is fun in and of itself. That's the difference between this and a lot of other games. Most games focus so hard on making your save file shiny or whatever that they forget to make the collectibles fun to get. And they nailed it in every sense of the word here, because it doesn't stop with the catching, it also continues into the monkey book. I did show footage of this earlier, but I didn't explain what it was. The game features an album of every chimp that you catch, and it is so satisfying to go through these when you catch every last one, seeing the funny photos and their wacky little descriptions. It's like they have a social media profile. It's definitely a character limit thing, but that limit forced the writers and translators to convey zany personality in the most concise way possible. So the phrasing for all of these feels really offbeat and quirky in a way that really gels with me. Genuinely, these little quips being as short as they are makes them 10 times funnier than if they were like full sentences. It's like if Twitter was good because it was full of monkeys. All the way to the end, Ape Escape's core draw and level design are still worth playing just for the heck of it. But what about the final battle you get? The real one this time. The peak point matrix is unlocked once we finally catch every last chimp. After spawning in, what follows is a 2-minute long cutscene where Spectre and Spike hash out their philosophical differences. Oh no, I don't want to be a victim of animal abuse and be forced to live in the zoo. Well, fuck you, you should live in the zoo for the rest of your life. You should be forced to do that. Like I've said, this game's dialogue-driven scenes are not the most engaging due to the voice acting, but the lack of music in this scene makes it a little bit more intense. It gives it a little bit of emotion. Honestly, seeing Spectre waver between so many feelings makes him a surprisingly compelling antagonist for this shonen movie, basically. The fight is actually really fun and well worth getting all the monkeys for. It uses the first-person aiming, magic punch, and makes you move around quickly to get in damage while avoiding damage. The fast pace with all the variety and attacks really is the key here. You feel Specter's desperation through gameplay. You feel challenged, and unlike all the other boss fights, the attack patterns change enough throughout the fight that you don't have the chance to get bored of them. I love this boss. The challenging gameplay makes you feel like something cool was always meant to be waiting for you at the finish line. You could argue that the long cutscene at the start is really the icing on the cake for 100%ing this game and finishing the story. And since Ape Escape just can't help but be super fun and super cool, when we finally bag Specter, we get one last burst of edgy, cool flair. For the 80 billion millionth time, this game fucking owns. The graphics are awesome, the soundtrack is cool, the controls feel novel and great to this day, the monkeys are amazing mascots for the game and enjoyable to chase down, the story is surprisingly fun to see through. Despite its flaws, as an overall piece of interactive art, Ape Escape is a total slam dunk. And it was pretty popular too, it made gold, so they made more, but it never reached the success of the first game. Ape Escape 2 sold 1 million less copies than the first, which is a big blow. Ape Escape 3 sold even less than that, so it's really tough to come across them now outside of the PSN store or PS Plus or whatever. I'm not really interested in them. They just don't have the cool factor from the outside looking in. Ape Escape 2 introduces this little baby monkey and these dedicated super villain monkeys. It definitely feels like they were leaning more towards a comedic, cartoony appeal instead of the silly anime approach of the first game. And you can see that in the new monkey designs that look like Disney World costumes. I know a lot of people still like these games a lot, so maybe I'll try them out someday. I'm not just gonna completely disregard them, but it would take some effort for me to swallow the different aesthetic. Plus, the franchise was becoming a mess by this point already. Ape Escape 2 was published by Ubisoft and didn't even have Terada making the OST. Based on that game, they made this flash animated series. It looks awful, character designs are crap, the jokes aren't funny because the people monkeys are just the minions in the context of this cartoon.
Where's my ice cream?
They remade the first game on the PSP, which doesn't have the right sticks, so it's really just more of a standard platformer. They made this PlayStation Move game that nobody talks about. It's an on-rail shooter where the literal PS Move wand turns into gadgets, and you're assisted by more realistically proportioned anime girls? And is that what Specter looks like now? What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Spike showed up in the Smash ripoff they did, and that game sucks too, but I guess that's not Ape Escape's fault. Eventually, they woke up from the sunk cost fallacy they were giving into, and they stopped making Ape Escape stuff and let it become something to have a nice little Easter egg every once in a while, which is a shame because this first game is so iconic and good. But why did Ape Escape get less popular? Well, you have to keep in mind that sales of the original were definitely going hand in hand with selling the DualShock 1, which was new for the PS1. The PS2 just came with this, and that console was stacked as hell. I know Ape Escape wouldn't even be the first platformer to catch my attention with that lineup, let alone every other genre. A lot of people want the series to come back with a new entry or even a remake, but you know what? I do not. Because the overall tone of the series is completely different from what the first game accomplished. And the right stick controls wouldn't really be a big selling point now. Like, they could build the game around the DualSense controller if they wanted to, but they already made that Astro's Playroom game, so it wouldn't even like feel super cool. If they made a proper Ape Escape 4, could they really come up with any new gadgets? Even the second game didn't really have any substantial new ones to offer. I hate to be super cynical here at the end, but I kind of prefer being able to look back at this insanely unique single game that still sticks out to this day with its controls, cemented itself at just the right time in history, and had more than enough style to make it a very likable experience. I'm sure 2 and 3 worked out the few bumps in the controls and had plenty of fun levels, even if it was just more of the same formula. But I play a lot of platformers, so I've seen a lot of that progression before. The first game's really the one-hit wonder of the whole franchise in terms of giving me an audio-visual kinesthetic experience that really surprised me. It's not my favorite game ever, but even after beating it years ago at this point, replaying it now, my jaw was on the floor from relearning the controls, seeing the low poly graphics, hearing the bizarre but boppin' music, and exploring these sick levels. Ape Escape just really gets what I want out of games. I don't know if I'd recommend trying to emulate this one because of the controls, but you could try, and if you can find a physical copy or are able to get it on your PS5, please play this. I can't recommend the experience enough. Alright, the review is done. And man, oh man, did Disney really cuck John Boyega when they made fucking Star Wars.
stays the same, the more that it will change. The more it stays the same, the more that it will change. Never fading, when I'm lost in. Never fading.